Marketing has always existed. Funnels and some of the more traditional ways of doing marketing don't work anymore.
You're not going to be able to grow your business with just a simple meta ad.
Relationship-based, story-based marketing is where it's at.
Your job in this process is to create relationships. You don't just need your salespeople to do that. You should own that.
The niche selection is a key component early in the process.
That is the area that I think most business owners actually struggle with.
Niching down makes the audience smaller, but it makes it more intentional.
One of the keys to make marketing consistent.
Without that system, it won't matter who's doing it.
You should be investing in marketing.
Yes.
You've got to make sure that you have the right people in place.
Put the work in as the founder. You've got to have a good initial prototype before you try to clone it.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Good Business. Guys, I am pumped to have my good friend Dustin Reichmann from Seven Figure Leap joining us. He flew all the way from St. Louis, and I'm not going to make the dad joke, Luke, that I make on every other episode. Are your arms tired?
There you go.
All right,
I anticipated that one.
Yeah, he was ready.
You were ready for it.
Seasoned.
You got kids, you get it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dustin, thank you so much for being here, man. And Luke, thank you for joining me as my co-host.
Always.
Luke Frazier is our Chief Growth Officer here at Good Agency, and he is smarter than me. So with that being said,
all right.
Dustin, tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
I'm a Christian gentleman, married almost 24 years,
Come
three
on.
kids.
All right.
Like almost empty nesting now, so I feel really old.
Wow.
Yeah, we got one left in high school, one just graduated, and one's already out. So that's, I start with that because that's like my core. That's the thing that really matters. And then in business, I run a company called Seven Figure Leap, and we like to say we help people build seven-figure brands by telling their story. If I walked into a room and and someone kind of knew me, they would say, "Hey, Clay, do you know Dustin? He's the podcast guesting guy." So that's kind of become my moniker, and it's like the thing that I really subspecialize in. But yeah, man, I'm just like a geek on marketing and business growth and entrepreneurship.
Love it. Love it. What we're going to be talking about today is this concept of a marketing flywheel.
Yep.
And I'm really excited to dive in because, honestly, the flywheel methodology. Who was the one that came up with the flywheel?
HubSpot.
No. It was
Well, Jim Collins.
Jim Collins
is-
did the flywheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think people have just run with it
Yes.
since
Yeah.
then. But yeah, I heard Jim Collins speak recently.
Oh, really?
And it was like his first speaking gig in like 10 years or something like that. And I was like, awesome, this is great. But yeah, I'm excited to hear from you about how you've applied that methodology to marketing and specifically on the guesting side, just kind of zeroing in on that. But tell me a little bit about just your perspective on marketing in general right now. Let's go really high level and then we'll zero in. So marketing in general in light of AI, in light of the economy, in light of global conflicts and trade wars and all this kind of stuff.
Tariffs.
How does that apply to the marketing as we see it in 25, 26?
Great question. Yeah, we're going to start light and we're going to ease into the interview here.
I like to really just rip the Band-Aid off.
No, man, I think marketing has always existed, right?
Yeah.
And I think it will always exist. And so it's more about like the application, the tactics, the technology associated with it. And so good marketing is good marketing is good marketing. And so I actually had a really good friend of mine 2 days ago send me a Voxer message. And I don't know what triggered it, but it was sort of like an existential question, sort of like this, like, hey, there's a lot of global instability and, American currency and all these trade wars and all this stuff. And like, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, nothing. I can't control any of that. So like, I'm just
That's in
going
the
to keep
threats box.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing the things I can control. I'm going to pray about those things. I'm going to vote and things like that. But like, my business is about helping people with really good messages make an impact in the world. And I'm going to keep doing that because that's the part I can control. So yeah, I think the state of marketing, there's no question AI is a huge influence. I think we're in an age and where like efficiency for efficiency's sake is sort of like run its course in a way, right? Like everything is so efficiency oriented, efficient, I guess is the easy way to say that I feel like we're even more than ever, like the power of niche knowledge, of specialization, of standing for something, of having a story that resonates with people is like even more important. It's like and we're going to talk about flywheels. I think the flywheel effect is like more important than ever because the idea of funnels and some of the more traditional ways of doing marketing, I think, just won't work. And they just don't work anymore. And they're going to work even less well moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really curious about this because traditionally marketing over the years, I mean, as you mentioned, the tactics will always change. It's still going to be marketing. It's still going to be relational. But there's still an idea of, can you create your value proposition? What makes you different? Yes. How does that fit into your flywheel process, and what sort of sets that apart, or where does it not fit in really into the process?
Yeah, I think when a flywheel is done well, because a flywheel, we can kind of define that for people here in a second, but a flywheel, like any other tactic or any other strategy, can become dehumanized. I think the best marketing, including the best marketing that incorporates flywheels, is very human-centered and very human-oriented. And so I think relationship-driven marketing, story-based marketing, individualized, personalized marketing is how you create the best value proposition. And it's the thing that stands out in a really noisy world and where information's ubiquitous and everything's fake, everything's AI, right? Like, and so
you don't know it's real.
Yeah, you don't know what's real. And so I think realness, empathy, story, real human connection, relationship-based marketing has always been the best way to do things. But we had a period there where information became distinguishing, like there was people who had it and didn't have it, and now we've like closed the chasm. It's like no one had it, then like some people had it and some didn't. Now everyone has it again. So I think we're back to this reality that like relationship-based, story-based marketing is where it's at.
Yeah. So good. So good. So you mentioned funnels earlier, that they're kind of a thing of the past. How does that differ from this concept of a marketing flywheel?
Yeah. I'm not saying funnels are dead, right? Like everything's dead. So funnels are dead.
dead. No, it's not.
Is ClickFunnels dead?
Oh, can it be?
No.
Did I say that out loud?
Sorry.
I'm not going there. But
We said no politics.
I think what I would say, like for sure, is that funnels are very linear.
Okay.
Right? Flywheels are circular. That's like, if no one's really familiar with this concept, that's like the big primary thing. Jim Collins, Good to Great, awesome book. His approach to flywheel education is more like really big picture, like why is Amazon successful, right? Like the big business cycle, sort of like value proposition of that company. Nathan Barry, is a friend, someone I really admire. He's really taken flywheels down to what he calls creator flywheels. So if you're like in a business like us, or a lot of our clients, what are all the different flywheels that apply to us, not like huge enterprises like Amazon? And what I think we'll talk a lot about today is my sort of subspecialty in this, and the thing I geek out on is marketing flywheels for creators, right? And so I just want to give people context, because like flywheel means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so to borrow Nathan's definition, a flywheel by definition is a circle. And so think of it as like multiple steps. And so a funnel, is like this, it's linear. It's got a beginning and an end. It kind of narrows down to a point, and then things drop out the bottom and disappear, either as a sale or not a sale in a sales funnel. Whereas a flywheel is by definition circular, so it doesn't end, it keeps going around. And so what makes a flywheel effective is that the steps in the flywheel flow smoothly from one to the next. And where it gets exciting is every rotation of the flywheel, and we'll go through some examples to drive home what this means, gets easier, and every rotation of the flywheel gets more powerful. So it's very much like, think about a flywheel is literally a mechanical device, right? Like it's a thing that creates momentum. So it's not quite a perpetual motion machine. It's not like you spin it once and it keeps going forever. It needs energy, but every rotation gets easier and more powerful and faster and faster and faster. So a kindergarten example, since we were using dad jokes, a funnel to me would be more like a kid says, "Push me down the slide." And you push them down the slide, and then they're done. And if they want to go down the slide again, they got to climb back up, and you got to push them again. And you're starting from, it's like a one-off thing that you start from scratch with every individual who enters the equation. A flywheel is much more like a merry-go-round, right? So you get 20 kids on there, you got one process, and the first time you go around, it is hard, right? You got to like drag these kids around. The second time it's a little bit easier, but it keeps going faster and faster and gets easier and easier till you get to the point where you can just take your finger and this thing spins like crazy and kids are flying off and it's a lot of fun. So like that's a flywheel. It's not actually a flywheel, but like that's how I like to visualize a flywheel is a merry-go-round, not a slide.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I love it.
That's great. So walk me through just some tangible examples, if you can, of what that marketing flywheel might look like. Yeah,
so kind of a famous modern example is a guy named Sahil Bloom. I'll use this because it's really simple. It's 4-step flywheel. He calls it the million subscriber flywheels, right? So he had this goal, how can I get 1 million people on my email list? And he wants his email list to be its own flywheel effect, right? And so for any flywheel, there's one key objective. So it's like, what am I optimizing for? And that's what I'm going to build the flywheel for, right? So in his example, it's new email subscribers. So if you think about like, just call it 4 little boxes around a circle. So new email subscribers is like the goal at the top. And then you kind of go one quarter around the circle, and we just call that like newsletter growth. So if I want new email subscribers, it's going to create newsletter growth. And then this is where the flywheel effect starts to pick up. With new emails growth, he can sell bigger sponsorships because he's got more subscribers. Yeah. And then to close the loop, and this is why it's not a funnel, it's a flywheel, when he gets new sponsorship revenue, he reinvests it into new subscribers. And so you think every time I get a new subscriber, I've got a bigger email list, so I can sell a bigger sponsorship package and I can reinvest more money to get more subscribers. Yeah. And then it's just, so every rotation is a little easier and it's bigger and bigger. And that's how you create exponential growth. A funnel would be, I pay money, new subscribers come in, they drop out the bottom, and then I take some new money, but there's no like connecting loop back to the sponsorship money that's reinvested into the growth. So that's a really simple example. Another one that is near and dear to my heart, it's what I teach and it's what we help people build, is a marketing flywheel that's fueled by podcast guesting. So, like what I'm doing here. So if you got a business of really any type, especially an online business, and you want to grow that, you have lots of ways to market, right? And so one of the ways to market would be to be a guest expert on someone else's platform. And so it's a little hard to do without a visual because there's multiple steps, but just bear with me and say, hey, like the entry point into this flywheel is being interviewed on a podcast. So that's like the energy that you as the entrepreneur are putting into the process, because there's always energy that has to be put in. So what happens after you get interviewed on a podcast if you do it well? So there's multiple steps that follow, right? Number one, you build your email list because, hopefully you do a good interview, you have a call to action, and people are like, hey, I want more of that, and they get on your email list. So that's kind of step one. Step two, sales. Like there should be some sales, direct sales, long tail sales. There's, these are nuanced boxes. Step three, and a part that I specialize in that a lot of people overlook, is relationship building. So if you're on a podcast, you should be able to build a relationship with the audience, with the host, with the other guests. And so there's a lot of relationship capital. The next step would be content repurposing, right? So you're on this podcast, you got this beautiful video set up, right? And so now you've got fuel for your other marketing activities, your social media. And I'm almost closing the loop with all of those things. So new interview, email, sales, relationships, content repurposing. What that builds ultimately is more authority. The authority is the loop closer. It's the thing that brings us back to the top, because when I have more authority, because I have a bigger email list, more relationships, more money, more content, now I can get on bigger podcasts more easily. And so that's where the wheel kind of effect, the momentum picks up. So that's a couple examples. One a little more advanced with the podcast guesting, one very simple, the 4-step million subscriber Sahil Bloom flywheel.
Why is the relationship piece for your flywheel in the podcasting and guesting, why is that the most overlooked, and what's sort of your tactic and play to come against that?
Yeah, love that question. So I think it's the most overlooked because it's the thing that's not talked about enough. It's like... is
it too like touchy-feely?
Yeah, like blame ClickFunnels if you want. But for whatever reason, in this, kind of the age that we've been in with marketing, it's very tactical, right? So it's very much like, can I put a nickel in and get 8 cents back? Or, and it's very faceless, and like that's been kind of marketing. And I've got lots of different iterations of my entrepreneurial journey. I've done all that stuff too. So I think for one, there's a lack of awareness that like there is relationship capital there. I think another thing is like, we tend to be reserved, or like I'm an introvert, right? And so the idea of networking, has kind of got this moniker of like, that sounds horrible and exhausting. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so people kind of assume relationship building's hard. And it's not hard when you do it in this way. So kind of some of the reasons people overlook it, I think it's just like not a normal part of what we consider marketing. And then why I'm so jazzed about it, and why I think it's so important. So it's one of the things to me that sets apart podcasting as a medium. And so if you think of all the other parts of that flywheel I described, they're kind of the same benefits or outcomes that you would expect from kind of any marketing, right? SEO, paid ads, social media marketing, email lists, sales, content, authority, that's there. But the wedge in the wheel or in the wheel that makes this so special is the relationship capital for podcast guesting specifically. The thing that really makes this a unique flywheel, because it's human to human, right? And so when you're doing podcast guesting the right way, you have the linear sort of like predictable marketing growth that you'd expect from any marketing channel that you're investing in, and it's human to human, which always creates this wild sort of unicorn effect, right? So in any given podcast interview, I could have a predictable number of leads and sales, and I'm gonna get content. Like, I kind of know the table stakes, like this is gonna happen. But because meeting Luke could change my life, or meeting Clay could change my life, or Clay could introduce me and I can have lunch with someone today that could be a huge collaboration partner, invite me to a mastermind, I meet like some other person that changes my life. There's the like unicorn. It's almost like playing the lottery, right? Like you just never know where these awesome relationships are gonna come up. And that's what makes it so exciting to me is it's a fun, legal way to play the marketing lottery, and you can't lose because you're still going to get the baseline linear benefit. But the thing that makes it an exponential growth is like the human element.
Yeah, I do think that like the one unlock. We were sort of talking about this on a previous episode with Casey Baker and the FRE work that we're doing, is that aspect is often looked at as like the sales job.
Yeah.
And not the marketing job. And it is a beautiful marriage to like, hey, actually your job in this marketing process is to create relationships. Yeah. And you don't just need your salespeople to do that. Like, you should kind of own that. And that's in large part what I'm hearing you say in this process. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you have the right marketing approach, you're absolutely building the relationship capital. Yeah. So I think it's an awesome distinction, Luke, because to me, in the right setup, there's a very blurry line between marketing and sales. And if your company's set up as a flywheel, by default, they have to link and loop around to each other, right? Like, that would be another great distinction between funnel. Like, a funnel approach to business development would be like awareness through ads or content, right? And at some point in that funnel, it drops out of marketing into sales, and then Luke's got to go like actually get to know the person and build a relationship. And then it drops out the bottom as a sale or not sale. Whereas in a flywheel, if you do it right, in my opinion, all parts should be building the relationship.
Yeah. Yep.
And after the transaction, it should loop back and feed itself to where you're, we can talk about flywheels for this podcast as an example, but like, if you think about closing the loop to where after someone transacts with you or doesn't, they don't drop into the ether and they fall at the bottom of the funnel. They actually loop back to feed the momentum of the next rotation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's
so good.
I think that's a really good distinction, that sales and marketing being blended in the process is one of the ways to make this work so smoothly.
Yeah. I love that. So I've got so many questions, and I'm going to try to tailor them. I'd love to just zero in on a example of maybe a customer that you've worked with that you've done the guesting and that you've implemented the flywheel. What was the successful outcome for them, and what has been? I mean, maybe it was just one relationship that turned into many. And is there a way to track it, or is that something that we don't get to do because of the relational component? What are your thoughts on all that?
No, that's awesome. That's a great question. I have one that comes to mind. It's going to sound pretty meta. So there's a friend of mine named John Meese, and he was on the Nathan Barry Show. We've mentioned Nathan a few times now because of the flywheel thing. He was on there. The podcast released about 3 weeks ago, so this is very new. And yesterday, because John's a client of mine, so I taught John what I do, and he's created a flywheel. And ironically, we were both in studio with Nathan at the same time, and so there's a lot of like overlap here. But put all that aside. John Meese on a podcast with Nathan Barry has a flywheel in effect. Like he's already got this thing set up. He's not even on social media. Like he only does podcast guesting, and he's a writer. So he has books and podcast guesting. That's his marketing, and he's got an awesome business. And so he was on this podcast, and I literally yesterday said, hey, it's been like 10 days, 14 days, something like that since it went live. Like what's happened? And he was able to very discreetly pull up his CRM and say, it was like, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It was like 112 opt-ins from the podcast. He calls them serve calls, but like booked calls for his flagship program. He had 6 already completed, and he had several more,
That's
queued
awesome.
up. And he had already made 3 sales. He has a $5,000 program. And part of his flywheel, because he doesn't do social media, is he takes opportunities like this to basically use other people's media that features him. And he does have an email list, so he feeds that back to his email list. And he's like, hey guys, please go watch this YouTube video and comment on it. Like, I never ask you to do social media stuff because I don't do social media, but go comment on Nathan's social media and let's build some momentum. And so within like less than 2 weeks, he had over 2,000 views on the YouTube channel. There's like 40 comments. And what he told me was he had 2 additional sales from people that he had already had conversations with in the past that are sort of sitting dormant on his email list. And so it created a reactivation moment where someone's like, oh, I've kind of like put this aside. Now it's back in front of me. I watched your interview with Nathan. This is like, now it's really resonating with me. And it's some external validation because Nathan's like, this, what John teaches really works. So net effect, 5 sales, $25,000, over 100 very highly qualified email leads on a niche podcast. Like I Love Nathan is not a big podcast that he runs, right? And so that's a very real-time example. And that's I'd say, usually the first 30 days on a podcast is sort of the bump, right? It's like the initial spike. There will definitely be a long tail effect though, where this interview lives on for a very long time.
The evergreen component is so
and because
nice.
it's a highly produced content repurposing for that piece of the wedge, John's going to continue to have this as part of his evergreen email newsletter, right? He's going to be like, hey, check out me on the Nathan Barry show and check out this clip, which he didn't have to go produce. He doesn't even have a social media presence. And so that's a very real-time example of someone who's using this.
When you're doing that with John, your clients, are you teaching them to build this out in automation, or are they doing a lot of this real time? What's the balance between some of the tactics? And I watched some of the videos and learned some of what you're talking about. And so it seems like there's a little bit of both, but like how much can we automate for busy teams? And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the amount of time that I have to spend doing a lot of other things. And I want to do all these things. Just me in my own position. This is literally who I am. And I just like, no joke. I just don't, I hear all that and I'm like pumped, I'm excited. And I'm like, also, how do I do it?
Sounds like a lot of time.
No, seriously. But I know it's valuable because when we go to conferences, when I do networking events, I'm much better like this. Way better like this than I am trying to run, And so anyway, what is that process like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we teach a 5-step framework, and I want to provide the context here because the 5th step is kind of the choose your own adventure part of this, and that's where this becomes it depends. But the first 4 steps are very standardized, very automated, and so I'll go really quick, but purpose, plan, pitch, perform, profit. And so we start with getting really clear on someone's goals and objectives for podcast guesting in this example. What are the KPIs we're driving? What's the transformation we provide? Obviously we have the story brand messaging side. Then we get into plan, which is finding the right shows. Pitch is approaching those shows to get accepted. Perform is like how to actually be a compelling interviewee. And then the 5th step is profit, right? So, and we work with people for 90 days. The first 30 days are the first 4 steps. It's very standardized. It's automated and or all handled by a virtual assistant that we train on behalf of our clients.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so if I was working with Luke, working with Clay, I would work with you over the first 30 days to do the process to kind of like sift and sort and make sure it's your voice and it represents your brand and your goals, because you can't outsource the purpose of your marketing. But once we get past that 30-day mark, the whole intention is for an assistant who can represent your voice with the tools that we've created will run this on repeat. So as far as the getting on the podcast to do the fuel, as quickly as possible, we want the entrepreneur's role to be like, oh, I got a booking today at 1 o'clock. I'm going to get on, and I know that, and I've got the questions waiting for me, right? So we want to put you in a seat of expertise. Almost all of our clients like love to teach, love to coach. They have great stories to tell. And if that could be their marketing, they're like, that sounds awesome, right?
Yeah.
So that part is very standardized, I guess, is an easy way to say that. And then what happens after the interview gets published depends a lot on your business model and your level of sophistication. You know, like I work with a lot of successful but purposefully small teams. And so after the interview goes live, what you do with it depends on your goal. So like in John's example, he doesn't have social media, so he's not taking this and putting it on LinkedIn because he doesn't have that. He purposely chooses not to have that because of the 4 little kids and the 3-day work week and the lifestyle that he's chosen. And so that's how he runs with it, right? I run with it with a much more automated approach, but I don't take the human out of it. So I guess just Luke, to answer your question more directly, for me, when a podcast gets published, I have automated things that happen to get the content out on my social media, because I do have social media. And then one of the steps in there is a really simple one. It's like leave an iTunes review for Clay. I'm not automating that because I want to actually give a really good review and I want it to be authentic. But there is a automation that comes to me that says, today you need to leave a review for Clay, and here's a link. So it shortcuts the process.
That's good.
So I don't believe in taking all the human out of it, but we do automate as much as possible.
Yeah, systemized processes.
Systemized processes.
That's great.
I mean, so yes, can this work at a very large agency? 1,000%. And you would just be, it would run through your SOPs, your delegation plans, and we'd automate what we can, guarding against the temptation to automate everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big fight right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. So to that end, when you think about the areas that should be automated, and this kind of goes back into that question about measurable results, like what do you recommend that people track? And what do you recommend that people automate? As tactically as we can, because I know that normally we think more theory on this show, but I love how tactical your advice is.
Yeah, so. I love that. So I would say one big difference between a flywheel and a funnel in how you measure is a funnel is very like one-off event oriented, right? It's like, I did a webinar, how many people showed up, how many converted, how many whatever, and you've got like a funnel, like literally the numbers get from bigger to smaller and then they drop out the bottom. A flywheel, by definition, is not intended to be a one-time event. It's a repeated event. So you really got to measure trends. You can't, measuring a flywheel for one podcast, for example, it doesn't mean much. It's really after, say, 5 podcasts, now I can see how the authority is getting me on bigger podcasts, how my conversions are going up, how my social media is growing because of the content I'm repurposing. So it's sort of the mindset for the audience would be, in flywheels, measure momentum and trends. Don't try to measure one-off events. And then a simple example of what to automate and what not to automate. One of the strategies we like to use and teach, we call it like mining the guest list, right? And so very simple. I'm on this show. You've had numerous seasons of the show. I met some awesome people that are here as part of this season, and I want to build relationships with them, right? And I want to do that authentically. And I don't need to personally go look up every person that's ever been on this show, figure out their LinkedIn profile, connect with them. Like that totally could be either automated or have a virtual assistant do it, because it's a very repeatable process. And so we do that. So on this show, after this publishes, one of the things we'll do, I have a virtual assistant trained, and she will mine the guest list. She'll basically go look at all the other guests that have been on this podcast, and she will put them into their names on a spreadsheet with their LinkedIn profile and kind of 3 buckets. Are they a potential client, a potential partner, like a collaboration partner, or do they have a platform that Dustin might want to be on?
Yeah. I wonder which buckets I'm going to be in.
Yeah, we're going to find out. And then she will connect with them on LinkedIn from my account.
Yeah.
Again, this is, to me, it's automated because it's a human doing it, but,
there's a clear process.
Yeah.
Process for you.
Process.
Yeah,
It could easily be software, except LinkedIn would, shut us down.
Do not
so
do
we don't
that.
use software.
Don't use software.
But it's basically automated. Now, where does Dustin pick up in this conversation?
Yeah.
I think that's the important distinction. So she can send a connection request that says, hey, we were both on Clay and Luke's podcast. You're awesome. I'd love to connect. When they connect, if they just say thank you, we have a response she'll send that's like, hey, I've got this cool resource that I talked about in the episode. If you want it, here it is. If they're more like, thank you, and I'm actually really interested in podcast guesting, or hey, I met you last year at this other conference, then that gets flagged, and I'm going and personally responding, and
Got it.
that's where I pick up.
Okay.
So let's just give us an example. Like that will be for the listener. You get to choose what's human, what's automated, and what's like virtual assistant. We try to make it as simple as possible and as streamlined as possible, but caution heavily against trying to automate it all, because at some point, because it's a human-human relationship, there's a huge upside. There's also a really easy way to taint that. And that's by not being human in the relationship.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, I guess another part of the process is, and you mentioned this earlier, is in one of your earlier steps is sort of niching down on, for the podcast flywheel, like what podcast are you going to go after, which hopefully makes the audience smaller.
Yes.
But it makes it more intentional.
Yes.
Correct? And I imagine like that negates the overload of, trying to robotize everything here.
Yeah, there's a reason those 5 steps are in order, right? Like, and step 1 is getting clear on what are your goals and objectives, who's your target market, what are you trying to actually do with this? Then you move into which podcast to select. But that's still very early in the process, because a flywheel, it's like the good version of a flywheel is you've got this really smooth process that goes round and round. The tricky part of creating one well is if one of those is out of whack, it screws up the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so if I have really good intentions and then think of step 2 as finding the right podcast, if step 3 is pitching, step 4 is performing, step 5 is profiting, if I choose the wrong podcast, nothing after that works.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wanting to talk about marketing and I work with entrepreneurs and I get on a gardening podcast, not going to drive any results no matter how good everything looks,
Yeah.
And so that's a really important point, Luke, is like, and we've talked a lot about podcast guesting because that's what I teach, but in any marketing, the niche selection and the platform selection is a key component early in the process. And so any flywheel breaks down when one of the key components is out of whack. And I think that's important for people. And that's part of what you measure, right? It's like, man, like I feel like I'm doing this part good and this part good, but something's broken here. That's more that diagnostic tool where you can go back and see when things either start out of whack, or also over time, market conditions change, your positioning changes, your goals change. And so the same flywheel, for one, doesn't run perpetually without energy. Like a flywheel is not a perpetual motion machine, it's a flywheel. So it always has to have the input. Like if I just stop doing podcasts, no matter how efficient my system is and how good I am at it, like that authority is going to dwindle. The thing's going to slow down because eventually it's going to stop because I'm not putting any energy in. The idea is when I put energy in, I get 10 times the output and then 12 times the output, as long as I keep the momentum going. And so, that's an important distinction for people to recognize too. It's not on forever sort of thing. It's something you have to put some continual effort into.
I love it.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is the area that I think most business owners actually struggle with is the consistency.
Consistency,
Because they're running their business. They're delivering on the services and goods, and marketing tends to be kind of a backseat, and you end up seeing like this, I've got time to focus on marketing, and oh wow, we're growing so quickly, and then oh my gosh, I don't have any time, and so you come right back on down, and then you just have this endless cycle. That's why I think it's so important to have someone in your corner who's actually supporting you, and I think most people feel like, especially smaller business owners, so solopreneurs, founder-led organizations, I mean, like smaller than $1 million, smaller than $2 million in revenue, they struggle because it's just, I don't think I have money to invest in marketing. One thing that we're about to launch on our website is a marketing budget calculator.
Oh, nice.
So that hey, this is the size of the company, this is kind of the pie chart that you need to be operating off of, and this is where your money needs to be going. And I think that's really critical, is having confidence. You should be investing in marketing consistently. It shouldn't be you being the only one doing it. You do need support to ensure that there's no breakdown in that flywheel. And as you're ready to gain momentum, to increase the velocity of your growth, you've got to make sure that you have the right people in place to support you. Now, I'm super and I'm asking probably a question you're probably going to feel uncomfortable about.
All right, bring it on.
So how do you make sure that you have the right executive assistants to support that flywheel component of your guesting? Because people, that's the one thing you can't really control very well. So what is your process for ensuring that those people are matched correctly with the right client?
It's a great question. Does not make me uncomfortable.
Okay, cool. I'm just asking you to see behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll talk more like tactically about how we empower someone with a virtual assistant. But the first thing I would say, in any process that you want a virtual assistant to represent you, which is effectively what we're doing here, to the nth degree, as much as possible, take the variability out of the equation, right? And so what I mean by that is, in our process, very purposefully, there is no virtual assistant in this process till like day 35, because the first 30 days has to be with the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because you can't outsource something that's not already well-defined, codified, and like endorsed enthusiastically by the person's voice that you're trying to represent. So we're creating a master pitch that is very custom to an individual entrepreneur, founder, the person that's a brand ambassador in this case. And we are very discreet about the parts of that need customized eventually by a virtual assistant, right? Gotcha. And the coaching is with the entrepreneur. And so that's a really important distinction for any process. Is you got to, as painful as it is sometimes, put the work in as the founder and as the person who's going to be sort of replicated. You've got to have a good initial prototype before you try to clone it, right? Because you clone a broken system, it's just going to get chaos. So all that said, we've got a great pitch. We've got very clear definition around the types of podcasts we want to pursue. Then we can bring a virtual assistant in. And then to your point, Clay, like, how do you know the right human to be able to manage this? We take as much variability out as possible. Many times when a client's working with us, they already have a virtual assistant or an executive assistant, right? And this is not a big, laborious, taskless thing. This is like a few hours a week. So a lot of times it's like, hey, I already got Tiffany. She's awesome. She knows my voice. She already writes emails on my behalf. Yeah. This is just one more thing for her to be able to do that's going to be revenue generating versus just administrative. Now, if you don't have that, or if you need a fresh person, like, we're not a staffing agency. So part of what I do is we have a very robust community of alumni, and there are some staffing agencies in there, and they're also doing this for their own business. And so they're like, hey, yeah, we've got 4 people here, all of which would be available. And, just kind of a normal interview process, like, who would best represent your voice? Yeah. And the other thing I would say is, for really small companies and solopreneurs and people that are, well sub of $1 million, you can totally do this yourself too, right? Yeah. Like, it's really good to have a virtual assistant do it. I'm a huge believer in all your marketing should become an asset of your business. So this becomes an SOP, a checklist, and a training within your business that you own, so that if that virtual assistant leaves or, gets hit by a bus or whatever, someone else can step in. Yeah. And so we're not, I guess what I want to say is, the virtual assistant is important. I'm sure they're an amazing human. They're also very replaceable in the process when the process is created the right way. Yeah. I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, that's really good. There's a great company actually based out here in Austin. They're a staffing agency called Freed Up. Aaron Hayslip and Scott Fraser. I don't know if you connect with them, but
I've seen their stuff.
What I like about what you're talking about, like, their big selling point to a lot of founders is, we build you the system, and then the system is the thing that's repeatable in this flywheel. And of course you can fill people as needed, and they'll vet those. But I think it's just also, to double down on this, it's really important to understand, without that system, it won't matter who's doing it. And without the broken pieces in the system, I mean, we've just been re-looking at our own marketing flywheel strategy, and there are channels that aren't aligned in many ways. And so something's broken. And so I think it's also just a call, from what I'm hearing you say, and you kind of said, you did say this, it's a big investment, but, like, as a business owner, you do have to step back a second and know that, like, this has to be built out, and that's okay. And it's actually, it will 10, 100x later down the road. And so I'm curious, with the business owners you worked with, how do you help them through that hiccup? Because there's just a lot of fear or imposter or whatever, or investment, like, you're telling me to stop all the other things I'm doing to do this. Right. So what is that? How do you sort of corral them in that space?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. One thing I want to say too is our whole, I know it sounds kind of funny, like we're building this flywheel, right? And the flywheel that I described is the flywheel. And I started describing this other 5-step process. It's not really a flywheel, it's more of a funnel, right? It's like the 5 steps. My goal as quickly as possible is to shortcut as many of those steps as possible. And so once the flywheel over here, the results are spinning, like as an example, I've been doing podcast guesting for 2 different businesses for about 4 years. So for the first like 3 to 6 months of each of those businesses, I was writing pitches, I was doing cold outreach, I was trying to get the lay of the land, I was trying to figure out which of these places did my message resonate. But like for 7-Figure Leap, I've been, in this business for 3 years. It's been at least 2 years since I've written a cold pitch. So while that's part of the process, we need a virtual assistant. This is not like a forever life sentence of like, you got to do cold pitches to get on podcasts that don't know you, because you build authority and relationship capital and you start getting invited and it becomes a much easier thing. So that'd be one thing. And the other thing I would say, that whether it's podcast guesting or anything else, if it's founder-led marketing in the sense that like someone's got to sit in a seat and like represent the brand, whether that's speaking on a conference stage or doing a podcast or being interviewed on TV or whatever it is, I think one of the keys to keeping momentum going, even when sales are good and clients are in, and like Clay said, you definitely like tend to take your foot off the gas pedal on marketing because like we don't really need any more business right now. I think one of the keys to make marketing consistent is to make marketing fun, right? So if you're a founder and you're like, I love talking about what I do, or like, I love telling stories, and like your role was to show up and just like get to do that, like that's the outcome we hear a lot from founders is like, I'm going to keep doing this because I actually think it's fun. Like, it's also valuable in marketing and all that. I guess back to your...
That's good.
I don't know if that answers your core question, Luke, but I felt like there was a few...
No, it's helpful.
Loose strings there that I wanted to kind of to pull off here. So
yeah, it's really good.
No, I love it. Well, and I've got a note from my producer that we're coming up on time, which came really quickly. But I do want to just give you the floor to share a little bit with our audience. And I don't do this with everybody, but I really think that you bring a unique offering here. How can people engage with you? What do you recommend that they do next to get started?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that and appreciate the time to be here. So 7figureleap.com is our home base. If anyone's listening, they're like, some of this stuff makes sense. I need to see some visuals. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things today. They can get started for free. We do have we call it the podcast, profitable podcast guesting playbook. So 7figureleap.com/start. So pretty obvious where you start. That's going to be a free resource to kind of walk them through those 5 steps I talked about. We've got some really cool visuals. They can kind of figure out their own story, and if they want to do this on there, and they can do that. And then, as far as like how we work, it is pretty unique. We work in 90-day cohorts with 12 entrepreneurs at a time, kind of the Jesus model, where we put people together in a group, and we're leading them through a process of clarity and connection as we build out this podcast guesting system with them. Nice. And and then those people. Those clients come in and they're in this cohort and they really develop kind of a business family while they're getting the podcast guesting system created. And then when they graduate out of their kind of like day 91, they're also part of a much larger community of alumni, people who just love to teach, serve, give, collaborate. They're all doing podcasting. And so one of the things I'm really proud of is like our Jim Collins level holistic flywheel. To kind of close with that is like, as we get more clients and they have more success doing podcast guesting and they are part of our community, they now are building relationships, giving shortcuts, giving more podcast energy, if you will, guesting, hosting to other alumni, which grows our influence, right? And so the big asset that we're building a network effect around with the flywheel is a community of alumni of our methodology who are out there doing good in the world and doing marketing through storytelling and serving each other in the process. And so I'm really, really proud of what we built over the last couple of years around community and doing it through storytelling.
Yeah.
So.
Love that.
I will just echo, I downloaded this free resource a while ago, and we didn't talk about all of it here, but I would strongly recommend to download it because you go through all of the details and nitty gritty of like, what's the LinkedIn message? What's the email look like? And so anyway, do that because it's worth it.
Absolutely.
It's very helpful.
Well, and we know that trust, that authority, that humanity is our currency right now. I mean, AI is taking all of the automation and just saying, yeah, no one trusts anything anymore. So getting in front of people, ideally face-to-face, like what we are right now,
this is awesome.
is the fastest way to build that authority and trust that you need, which is the currency to grow your business. You're not going to be able to grow your business exclusively, especially if you sell a high-ticket item. You're not going to be able to grow your business with just a simple Meta ad or a LinkedIn ad or something like that. You're going to need to be building those relationships, and this is a fantastic way to do it. Dustin, it's been great building our relationship today.
Absolutely.
And thank you for hanging out with us, for making the hike down. And for all of you guys, thank you for tuning in to Good Business this week. And I'm so excited that you guys got to meet Dustin and hear about everything that he's doing at 7-Figure Leap. My encouragement is go check it out. Check out his website, 7figureleap.com/start.
Yep.
And I would also encourage you to share this with a friend. If you feel like you were impacted or you know someone who could be, share it with a friend, with a coworker, with a family member, or with another business owner in your network. I have no doubt that this will be a huge value, and it'll build your relationship with them too. It's a great opportunity to just say, hey, I was thinking about you. This is a great episode that you should absolutely watch. So if you like this podcast, please give us a 5-star on Apple, or subscribe, and of course, like, and whatever else they're allowing you to do these days on YouTube and all of the others. So that showed my age there for a second. We'll see you guys next week on Good Business.